Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on Into the Weeds. We are going to be talking about Jimmy Kimmel for a little bit. There has been a development today. So today is September 22nd. They have just announced that Jimmy Kimmel is going to get his show back. He's going to start doing his show again. So for those who maybe haven't been following, Jimmy Kimmel got some blowback after he said on his show that essentially that the person who shot Charlie Kirk was a MAGA person, and a lot of people came out had a problem with that. Brendan Carr, head of the FCC, said some things that a lot of people found troubling, and he basically lost his show. And there was a number of protests that happened as a result of that. And sorry about that. We had a quick technical interruption there. We're back. So there's been a bunch of stuff that's developed. I personally think that the two most salient things that have come out of the Jimmy Kimmel controversy are a discussion about the FCC and its role, basically going forward, and then the responsibility of journalists and entertainers, I guess, on broadcast stations, to be accurate in the things that they say, and then also there's definitely a difference there because there is no need to be accurate online or on social media platforms. There is no compelling need other than just market forces. So what do you think, Phil, of the two things that I just said, or is there something else that you want to talk about?
Well, so the part where so the coercion on the part of the federal government, essentially using the threat. Um, what did Cart say? We can do this easy way, or we could do it the hard way. I
Hmm.
think empowering the federal government and the FCC to go ahead and threaten comedians in general. I mean, comedians, journalists, anything, um, is a dangerous power.
I
Is it?
so I agree with you, but let's clarify very quickly. Let's go ahead and clarify that what Jimmy Kimmel said on his show was factually incorrect, right?
Okay. I have no problem with that.
So he said that the shooter of Charlie Kirk was a MAGA person. At the time, it was known that that was not true to anybody who had been following the information. I'm not sure if it was, and here's the thing, people have come out and said that he was lying about it. I don't necessarily think that Kimmel was lying about it. I think it's very possible and probably more likely that he was just mistaken, that he had gotten some bad information somewhere or he made a bad assumption. But let's start with that. So he definitely said something that was absolutely incorrect about a very contentious situation, and
Okay.
that led to. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So first, what he said is he was a MAGA person. What does that mean? Does that mean he supported Donald Trump? Does that mean that he came from a home that was supportive of Donald Trump, a MAGA family? Like, I don't know that we can say that what he said was wrong. It may have been said inartfully. But either way, even if he said something wrong, right, we don't want the FCC going ahead and threatening to use its authority to police people who are on the media. I would assume you agree with me. There's a way to do this.
Hmm.
Let the market decide. If somebody's getting up and saying things that are offensive, either people will stop watching that or advertisers will want to be associated with that particular person. And so you let the market take care of it. But when you have Brandon Carr getting up there and essentially sounding like a mafia boss, we can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way, right? While he's holding this potential merger, oh, that they have to approve, the FCC has to approve, holding it over their heads, that is a dangerous power to give the FCC. Um, they should not be policing content, in my estimation. Now, there are ways, we do have means by which if somebody says something that is knowingly false and is defamatory, you can sue them.
Mhm.
You can make it pay. And that would be the appropriate way to do it. But for people who are okay with the idea of the FCC um, threatening to pull licenses because people are saying things that they disagree with or they think are factually incorrect, all you have to do is imagine that power in the hands of an administration that you disagree with.
Mhm.
And there you have the problem right there. Anytime power goes to the federal government, it tends to stay there. And so if you like how one administration um, is going to use that power, be careful because you should use your imagination and think, might another administration use it in a way that I disagree?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And so that to me is very, very concerning, very concerning. We've Jubal and I have talked about this before in our other series. We're concerned about the growth of executive power. This to me is coercive. And one of the things, one of sort of the tenets of authoritarianism is when the a would-be authoritarian tries to control the media, right? If you couple that, what happened with Brendan Carr and his comment with Donald Trump seemingly implying that people, he said something about 97% of all the news is against him. I don't know where he got that number, but that basically he said they get licensed, that shouldn't be allowed. That's the mindset of an authoritarian. In
Mhm.
a democracy, speech is protected, not certain kinds of speech, but the courts have set the bar really high for the kind of speech that the government should be able to limit. Jimmy Kimmel's comment doesn't come close to that line, not even close to that line. And the idea go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think I agree for the most part with what you're saying, and I think maybe the broader conversation, and I don't think that that the courts are going to say anything different than what you're saying right now.
No, no, I agree.
So my question then would be, what is the role, if any, of the FCC in managing content? Because there are laws in place, for instance, profanity,
We're right.
right? You can't use profanity on public airwaves. You can't give an instructive class on how to build a Molotov cocktail, right? You can't engage in a diatribe of racial slurs, and you can't. My understanding is, and tell me if I'm wrong. My understanding is you can't knowingly come out and say something that you know is false. You can't commit. I guess you could call it airwave perjury. I'm not sure what the term would be. Um, I don't.
I don't know that that last one falls into the
Right.
jurisdiction because precisely because we don't want the federal government going ahead and policing um, specific comments about the government, right?
Right.
People should have the be free to say what they want to say. That doesn't mean there's not a mechanism for like what you're describing. If somebody says
Mhm.
something that's knowingly false and that's defamatory, we have laws on the books to go ahead and address that kind of problem, as we should, as we
Right.
should. Regardless of, so given all that, um, Jimmy Kimmel's comment doesn't come close to anywhere near that line.
Mhm.
And that's what I want people to be thinking about. Again, I think the
Right.
danger. Go ahead.
I was the best case scenario for what Jimmy Kimmel said is that he was embarrassingly inaccurate.
Again,
Uh,
to me, I thought the comment was sort of innocuous. I wouldn't have even noticed it when he said when I looked at it afterwards, and he said he was. They're trying to make it look like it was a leftist when it's somebody. He's a MAGA person or something like that. Again, the reporting that I'd seen at the time was that that his family were strong Trump supporters. Is
mhm.
that what Jimmy Kimmel meant? I have no idea. I have no idea. We know this guy wasn't a leftist, right? But was he a supporter of Donald Trump? No, I don't think that's accurate at all. Nothing has borne that out.
Hang on a
Um,
second. You said we know he's not a leftist.
Yeah, from oh no, let me rephrase that. We don't know what his ideological orientation is. We know apparently that he has a partner who is transitioning from male to female. So that's what I know about his political views. I don't know anything
I don't
else,
think that has anything to do with political views.
but
You
I
can be
think but I but
trans and conservative.
he
I don't think
but he
that.
clearly came from a family that is a conservative family. Now,
Mhm.
does that make him a MAGA person? Well, maybe loosely. Does that come close to somebody knowingly saying something that's false, consciously, like deliberately
Let, let me
mis?
let me
I don't think so. I
let
don't
me
think it
pause
comes
it.
close.
So the
Okay.
wording was what Jimmy Kimmel said
Sure.
was
Hmm.
that um, that they were desperately trying to characterize this guy. The MAGA people are desperately trying to characterize this guy as anything but one of their own.
Right. So again,
Okay,
so
so
anything but one of their own.
I think that's very clear to me. That's a very clear communication. I think that Jimmy Kimmel made a mistake. I don't think that he was trying to mislead people. I think that he legitimately thought that this was a MAGA person, and said that
And
on.
then and I believe you. I think you're right.
Mhm.
Or yeah, I believe you're right that some of the because as we've talked about repeatedly, sometimes for people they try and make the facts fit their orientation, and so if
Yeah,
the
they do.
if yeah, if they do, and so if it's being reported that his father and his family were conservatives, then that's all it takes for Jimmy Kimmel to say this is a MAGA person, right?
Right. That would be a good
Um,
example of that.
but
Right.
that doesn't even come close to
Hmm.
meeting the standard of defamation. Okay, and so then to me, it's like, okay, we do have laws on the books, as we've talked
Hmm.
about. If somebody does say something defamatory, it's hard to prove, as it should be, because you have to uh, demonstrate that they knew it was a lie, they said it was a lie, right, the whole thing, and that can be difficult. Um, and so what I worry is in the absence of that kind of evidence, and there
Hmm.
certainly was none at that point, then using the regulatory power of the federal government to try and pressure ABC to pull him off the air is deeply problematic.
Hmm.
Deeply problematic.
So I don't necessarily disagree with you on that it's problematic. But what I would say is that and maybe we need to do more of a deep dive into the actual regulatory framework of the FCC. But is it in the public interest to dramatically misinform people? I don't think that it is, right? And so I think that the argument coming from the other side is more like it's not necessarily about defamation because who was defamed, right? MAGA, like I don't think that counts.
Right.
I think this is more about what sort of responsibility does a public facing individual have to be accurate? And if somebody says something that is this inaccurate, is there a price to pay? Is there something that needs to be done to address that? Or is it just no problem? You can just be this inaccurate whenever you want.
Right. And to me, the question is, can somebody be inaccurate? That's the first question. Who who is the one who uh, regulates that?
Mhm.
To me, conservatives should be believing that the market decides that.
Mhm.
The market should
The
decide that.
people, the people decide
People,
that.
if somebody says something offensive, turn them off.
Right.
Just like exactly what happened is that when Jimmy Kimmel made that comment, um, and then ABC decided to cancel his program or suspend it or whatever, people were, people started canceling their Disney Plus subscriptions.
There were also a lot of people on the right who made it known what their opinion was of Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, so it wasn't these protests were not a one-sided affair,
Well, all
right?
I know is that after a relatively short amount of time, ABC announced that he's back on the air.
Hmm.
He's so to me, the market decided,
Hmm.
right? They looked at their bottom line and they said,
Right.
we got rid of him because of business reasons, right? We want this merger to go through. There was a cost to that decision imposed by people who canceled their prescriptions. I don't know if a bunch of people who were supporters of Donald Trump suddenly signed up for Disney Plus, right? But I know a bunch of Democrats who
Mhm.
canceled their subscriptions, and so the market did decide that's the way it's supposed to
Mhm.
work in a free society. What's not supposed to happen is the government get involved in it,
Sure.
right?
So the
And that and that,
accusation
and that's the
prior
problem.
to prior to Kimmel getting his show back, the accusation was that this was, Donald Trump forcing this decision down the throat of ABC. Do you still maintain that that's what happened, or did ABC make the decision first to fire him and then to bring him back?
I think ABC. It's hard to know, so it's entirely speculation.
Mhm.
Because there's a merger between two companies that the FCC has to approve. My guess is that when Brendan Carr made his comment, they decided that for business reasons it was a bad idea to piss off the FCC while they're trying to get this merger approved. So they thought it prudent to take him off the air. Um, then, when subscriptions started canceling, it didn't seem quite so prudent, and so they put him back on the air,
Mhm.
trying to please everybody. And so that would be my guess as to what happened, but I don't know.
Mhm. No,
That
sure, that
seems
sounds
reasonable.
right. So going
Right?
forward, I mean, what do we would it be smarter to try to expand FCC regulations to other sources of media, or would it be smarter to pare back FCC authority so that television is more like the internet? What do you think would be better?
I I I don't want the federal government policing content, other than the things like the community standard kind of things, like cursing, depicting violence, things like that, right? But in particular, comedians in particular, um, are always pushing the envelope. They're always pushing the envelope. That's kind of what they do. And so there's, to me, there's no place for the federal government to be involved in regulating that. When a license is given, it should be in the interest of the public. It should be made based on that, but they shouldn't have to hew any particular line for based on who's in power at the particular time.
I
I don't
agree
want
with
I don't
that,
want
but
I don't want a
what
Democratic administration going after conservative commentators and comedians, and I don't want a Republican administration going after liberal
Mhm,
commentators. I don't want the government involved in that. We get to decide. We vote with our money. We vote with
mhm,
our clicks. We vote by. We let the market decide. That's my
mhm,
take on it.
mhm,
And it's always weird. These are weird times when I find myself in agreement with Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. We're not living in normal times, right? But they were the ones who came out and they were just like, this is unacceptable. I
right.
think it should be. Now I will say that for me, while most people have not connected these two things, I think Donald Trump's comment about this idea that basically because the government gives these people um, licenses to broad use the airwaves, that they shouldn't be able to just criticize the president is deeply problematic. The Pentagon going ahead and saying it's now going to come up with some sort of loyalty pledge or something for journalists where they're going to have to sign something where they agree not to reveal not only classified information, which they shouldn't do anyways, but unclassified, that you could only release information that's approved by the Department of Defense. Um, all of that combined together
Mhm,
is straight out of an authoritarian playbook. It's all problematic. And so, what I want people to do is put those seemingly disparate things, discrete things together,
mhm,
because it to me reveals a pattern. So there's my concern. I'm glad I mean, I'm not somebody who watches Jimmy Kimmel. I don't have anything against him.
mhm.
I'm just not somebody who watches Jimmy Kimmel.
Right,
So the
right.
reality is
No, I'm the same way.
it's not gonna affect my viewing habits one way or another. I don't have Disney Plus. I don't have Hulu.
Mhm.
So you know, it's not
Yeah,
gonna make any difference for me.
the one
But
thing that I know.
I worry about the precedent it sets.
Sure. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think we're on the same page.
Yeah,
We're both on the same page as Ted Cruz. I think that that's what's important.
there we
Uh,
go. like sentences that I never thought would be said.
So, but what I do know about the FCC and about the way the regulatory structure works, and this is something that I learned from the show Newsroom with Jeff Daniels, which I have recommended to you in the past, the Aaron Sorkin show, which is great, by the way, if you haven't seen it.
I love Newsroom.
Okay, good.
You
So,
realize it was fictional, right?
of course. So,
Okay.
yeah, they
Who's if you
Sorkin
haven't
has
seen
talked at
Newsroom,
length.
watch
Yeah,
it.
Newsroom is really interesting.
It was
Sorkin talks at
fabulous.
length about how they created the stories, but they had a really good idea in that show. Sorkin, I guess, the guy who wrote the show, had a really good idea in the sense that here's the thing about the FCC. The FCC gives these licenses to these companies for free, and said in payment, what you have to do is you have to have an hour of news every night. This is why you have broadcast news, right? That's part of the agreement with the FCC. You have to have a news program every night for the American people. 23 hours a day, you work for yourself. 1 hour a day, you work for the American people. The only problem is, and this is something that Aaron Sorkin pointed out, the only problem is they forgot to add the clause that in that news program, in no way should you be able to advertise, right? You should not be able to advertise during your nightly news. That was the one thing that they left out because news programs, and I mean, cable news certainly, but even broadcast news has become a for profit enterprise. If it were not a for profit enterprise, if there were other standards that were used other than profitability, such as journalistic integrity, who gets the most scoops, who has the best stories, who's the most relatable, whatever it is, I feel like that would be a much better service to the American people. I would suggest that at some point the FCC implements that rule, the Aaron Sorkin rule, which is that you can't advertise during the news anymore. You have to do the news for free, and that's the cost of your FCC license. What do you think?
I'm not sure about the practicality of that, and how that would actually work. And I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure that that would fundamentally uh, change the content of the news. So here, let me just fill in a couple of details because what Jubal said is 100% right. It used to be that uh, you had to provide a public service, and so the news was public service, right? And back in the day, that's why news was so fucking boring, is because I mean, really, it was. They didn't put a whole lot of money into it, so they have a desk there, and somebody by a
Some guy
board, and
smoking a
they
cigarette. Oh, I'll tell you everything
yeah,
that happened
it
today.
would just be it'd be boring as fuck, and that's the way the news was. When corporations started, and so the way we refer to them is loss leaders. They weren't there to make a profit. They were gonna lose money, so
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to lose as little as possible. When corporations started buying up local news outlets, they said you guys need to change the way you do things, and that's why local news looks the way it looks now, is because they had to beef it up with all the graphics and
Sure.
the multiracial people who talk back and forth and
Mm-hmm.
say cute things and then go to the black
Right.
guy doing the sports, the woman doing weather. I mean,
Right.
we've all seen this. It's like, and that's where that phrase, if it bleeds, it leads, was first created,
Right.
because what local news programs realize is that what people really like to watch, admit it, you do,
Mm.
crime. You got a death, you got a shooting, you got a terrible accident. We watch that shit for the same reason. You all slow down. I do too. When I see an accident on the other side of the freeway, right? We slow down. That's why we watch car chases. So I don't know that it would change anything, because if I know my consumers, if I know
Mm-hmm.
my customers are primarily liberals, then the news I'm going to give them is still going to be something that I want them to hang on, so that when we get to the regularly scheduled programs, they're still going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, to me, I'm not too sure. I still think they would have a financial incentive to sort of present news that their customers are going to consume. So I don't know that that would fix the
Mm-hmm.
problem, um, but it probably would be a step in the right direction.
And
I
that's the
would,
way
I
I
would,
look at it. I think
yeah,
it would be a step in the right direction. I think you could start to create a more fact centric news culture by doing
It-
that, right?
I think that's only true if people really want facts, and I'm not convinced that that's what they want.
Okay.
Like so,
Yeah.
um, I'll find out
Unfortunately, it's
whether
probably true. It's probably
I'll
true.
I'll find out whether or not my girlfriend actually watches these things. She loves watching local news. I mean, to
Uh-huh.
me, I just like even to go to sleep, she'll flip on local news, and I'm laying there like, okay, a murder, right? A crime spree, a lost child. Like, I'm like, how do you fall asleep to this shit? I think they would still be doing those kinds of things pretty much. So,
Yeah, well, I'm sure they would, but it
yeah,
would at least there would be some forces pressing against, pure, just pure marketing, and there would be some kind of potential development for
right.
good news
So then,
programming. Maybe this is something we could talk about in our series if we ever do decide to launch it on news versus newsworthy, right?
oh, right, 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 right.
We can talk about this. But I think we're largely in agreement here. The FCC was way out. Brandon Carr, I don't know what he was doing. He was trying to look like a tough guy. They're way out of line, stepping in and saying, "Okay, we're going to do this our way." Yeah, no, you're not. And the court that you're not going to have the courts, so nobody's impressed, right? Nobody
Right.
really even cares what that guy had to say. I think this was very clearly a market decision from front to back. The company came out and said, "Oh, we got to get rid of Kimmel because everybody's pissed off," and then they brought him back because they're like, "Oh, wait a second, maybe not everybody's not pissed off." So, pretty simple to see what happened. Um, any last words from you on this?
Just the two things that I already stressed. One, um, to me, I see a broader pattern here of trying to shape coverage, whether what's happening, what Trump said about them not being able to criticize the government, the policy at the Department of Defense signing this like loyalty pledge is how it's being characterized. Again, journalists shouldn't, in my estimation, I know there's probably a lot of people, and especially people on my side, who are okay with leaking classified information. So who saw Snowden as being a hero, things like that.
Mhm,
I'm deeply concerned about that,
mhm.
right? But unclassified information, I want journalists to watch over the government. I want them to do their
Right,
job.
that's their job. That's their job,
Yeah,
and
absolutely, 100%. And
I
so,
think there's a
and
good
lastly, the
chance.
FCC is those three things together that should, I think, concern people. So that's the main thing. And then ultimately, let's trust the market to decide. Let the
Right,
market decide themselves.
100%. I think there's a good chance we're going to be talking about this thing from the Department of War. We'll see, but I'm a betting person would bet that we're going to have a conversation about that again soon.
And by
Thanks
the
for
way,
joining us, by the
wait,
way.
wait, wait. And
Oh
Jubal
wait,
and I
what's that?
both said that the government should not release the Epstein files or the client list, right? Um, but I want the government to release the list of journalists who are willing to sign a pledge.
Hmm,
I want to know exactly who's doing that and who's
hmm,
not.
hmm.
So that's a list I would like to see.
Yeah, probably that'd probably be useful. Okay,
Okay.
that'll do it for the Jimmy Kimmel controversy, and we're talking about some other stuff next time. We'll see you then.
Everybody.